Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Michael Phillips. Now, at the sister station of 106.7 down in Richmond, Virginia. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. The title of today's episode, Michael, is The Calm Before the Storm, meaning all the media frenzy that we're going to have regarding the NFL draft. Thank you for blessing me on this Sunday afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
It feels anything but calm. What do we got? 28 signings. Is that what we're up to now? Certainly, they're putting in the work there. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's quality, Kyle, but I do know that it's quantity.
Yeah, the storm meaning all the pro days and all the
Yes.
visits and everything and how much gets put into it. Because if we go back to last year, there was so much being said about Jaden Daniels. We all know about the little golf outing that all the quarterbacks had at the same time, which was genius by the organization, of course. But my question for you with Deebo and Tunsil, what does that mean for, like, from Adam Peters' point of view? What does that say about their kind of look at this football team?
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the draft too, so we can kind of all lump it in together. I think it says, that he's not confident he can get a starting left tackle at 29, right? So
Mhm.
you need to lock that up. I'll never complain about bringing in offensive line talent. So I mean, look, if Tunsil's a bust, whatever, but I think he's a really good football player. There's something there, obviously. Three teams now as a star left tackle is exceptionally rare. But certainly the talent's there, and if you can get that, you make everybody better along the line, and it certainly boosts you. And then the same thing with Deebo, I view it more as a running back play than a wide receiver play.
Okay.
To me, it says I can run this back with Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson, and everybody still got better because Deebo can touch the ball in space, can touch the ball so many different ways. Obviously, he's electric as a receiver. You're going to try to give him as many touches as you can, as many ways as you can. Certainly, that everybody understands that. But to me, it's about giving that little boost to the running back room. I think we were all maybe a little uneasy. I don't know how you felt about it. If you were ready to just run it back with B. Rob and Eckler, I know that didn't excite me. But then you hear about, okay, there's going to be a run on running backs in this draft. This isn't a year where you can grab a Saquon or a Derrick Henry in free agency. So I think that it's about upgrading that room as much as it is the wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because with them bringing back C-Rod, with them obviously retaining Jeremy McNichols, I had the same sort of feeling about the running back room where, because I've heard fans talk about you need that kind of explosion, right, from a running back, which obviously would always be the case that really helps you out in many ways and would take eyes off of Jaden, which I think was what Deebo essentially does for you. And then because personally for me, were we really worrying about explosion when Brian Robinson was running that touchdown run untouched against the Titans? And my point being is, like, me being a former offensive lineman and defensive lineman, I know that if you have a really good offensive line, you're not really worrying about running back that much. I mean, even go back to what Joe Gibbs did in the Super Bowl with Smith and plugging in the rookie right before the Super Bowl because he knew what the offensive line was giving you. And obviously Smith would have some explosion, but essentially my point being the whole time was, yes, there's a lot of running backs in this draft class. You have Anthony Lynn as a running backs coach, but I feel very confident that they probably don't feel the need to draft one high because of how many there are, and they could actually find gold either at the end of the draft or UDFAs.
I really like that too, and it frees you up. I mean, I think everybody understands there are positions you've got to get in this year's draft. Edge rusher, obviously, everybody understands that. I think corner's essential as well. It frees you up to get those with your top picks and not have that high on your worry list as well.
Well, and that brings me to my next question for you. What, besides edge and corner, what would you say the biggest needs are for Washington at this moment after the first wave of free agency?
Yeah, I'm always going depth on the offensive line. I think they got incredibly lucky with injuries this year. I really do on the offensive line. I know some guys missed games, but you look at the Eagles, two centers down in the NFC title game. I think that's far more what you can expect attrition-wise over the course of a football season. So I think you really want to get deep there. We saw the drop-off when Tyler Biadasz left games. Obviously in Detroit, you had Trent Scott fill in, and he was great, and he helped get them that win, but you need that depth at offensive line. You can never build too much depth on the offensive line, in my opinion. And then I'd love to see a linebacker. It doesn't need to be a first round linebacker. I'm not banging the drum for that or anything, but I'd love to leave the weekend with a linebacker who you say, all right, this guy can learn from Bobby Wagner. This guy could take notes with him and get ready because I think Wagner's another guy who he plays a lot of snaps. I think, as talking about his point in his career, yeah, I'd tiptoe into bad mouthing Bobby Wagner in any way because I love him. But if you could get him to 60% of the snaps, I think you'd see an increase in production.
I absolutely agree with you. And it definitely does help adding some big boys up front on the defensive line to keep Bobby kind of blockers off of him, right? So he can be able to come in there and be able to sniff out some of these runs. But look, let's just say last year, Johnny Newton was almost like a shock to all of us when that pick was selected in the beginning of the second round. What would you say is a position that almost could be like that for Washington? Maybe not the second round, but if they were to trade back, because we know there's a lot of talent with running back. We know there's a lot of talent with edge rushers and corners. What do you think a position could be in that kind of, if they trade back in the second round or at pick 61, that could be like that Johnny Newton pick?
I would not be surprised if they trade back into the start of the second round if they take a tight end with that
Okay.
pick, and I think that would, everybody understands where that's coming from. I think the surprise would be how high they do it. I think tight end is increasingly becoming a premium position, and that's a position where you get that solidified, you can really help out your quarterback, right? Everything we got to view it through the lens of how do you get number five as good as he can possibly be, all the protection he needs, all the targets he needs. And you got Zach Ertz this year, and you re-signed John Bates, and I don't know that we know where Sinnott is in his development. This is we'll go into the journalism side of things here. This is a tight-lipped group. I'd love to give you some insider Ben Sinnott report. I don't have one for you, Kyle. But I don't know where he's at in his development. But if you can add a star tight end, you're increasingly seeing a lot of these teams that make title games, that make conference title games, have that difference maker who can block and catch, and it just makes life easier for the quarterback. It'd excite me if they got one, but I think if we're making a prediction today, I'm saying edge rusher.
Okay, my man, I'm right there with you. I know that that's the consensus around, and typically it's not usually how these things work out, right?
Yes.
But I would be happy to hear that. I'd also be willing to bet safety is probably on that list as well, because obviously they like Quan Martin as kind of that free safety being able to roam, and he did really well. I know the Atlanta game was one that he stood out in, obviously against Detroit. But for the future being, obviously Harris being there on that 1 year deal, kind of replacing Jeremy Chin, we don't know much about Tyler Owens from a defensive standpoint. We know what he could do special teams, but because in my mind, Michael, the way that I think roster building should be done the best way, and I think the Eagles were very good at this. If you look back at what they did last season when they lost Jalen Hurts and others, you build your team looking at every starter position having to miss time. And if you're comfortable with your backup there, you're in a very good position, i.e., what Kenny Pickett was able to do.
I really like that strategy and that approach, right? Because you're only as good as your weakest guy on the field.
Right.
If anybody goes down, your new weakest guy is on the field all of a sudden. And a lot of people were, going to bat for Chin and wanted him back. But I think it's an acknowledgement by the team that they feel they can do just as well going younger. Bringing somebody in to develop. And I don't bet against Adam Peters. That's my new official policy after watching how last year turned out.
You're absolutely right about that. Now, I want to ask you about Terry McLaurin. Do you think, because look, I want Terry McLaurin to be retiring as a commander. I think that he is our generation's Darrell Green, whereas nationally not very respected in the terms of being a top five guy. There's other guys out there you could say are more talented than him, but he is perfect for us and what we are requesting of him, and he continues to produce. Do you think that a contract extension is in the cards this offseason?
I do. I think it's coming. Probably, I look at Ryan Kerrigan, who re-signed the morning training camp began the year he got his extension, and that kind of feels about right with Terry, where they spend the offseason getting to where everybody's comfortable, and if you do it before then, that's great. Receivers are expensive right now. I think the question is, just how big, how much, how long. But yeah, those aren't the kind of guys you play games with. Those are the kinds of guys you cut the checks to, and I I think everybody wants it, but I also think they've got the salary cap space to make it happen. I feel good about it. I don't think Terry's worried about it. If we get to midway through training camp, maybe we start to ask some questions there, but I don't think we get to that point.
Okay. And now to wrap this, only a couple more questions for you, but to wrap two questions that I have into one. Cosmi's return. Obviously there's been reports that he's working very hard. He's in the facility. I think Dan Quinn actually talked about it that Sam Cosmi's been there trying to come back as quickly as he can. So what are your expectations on his return? I would mark like week 8, probably a safe, comfortable place for that. But that being said, they signed Urbig from the Steelers, who's 6'6", 320 pounds, which is music to my ears going up against guys like Jalen Carter and Davis in Philly. But also they re-signed Trent Scott. He stepped in for Cosmi in that playoff run. Who do you think is going to be the starter there at guard?
Yeah, I think that you're probably looking at reshuffling the whole deck. I think you're going to take Wiley in.
Okay.
I think you're going to move Coleman to right tackle. You're going to move Wiley in. And you probably leave Allegretti and Biotish. I'm with you. I love the Urbig signing. Right? Yeah,
Mhm.
you can't have too many big dudes who you can move around. I'm a big fan of that one as well. Yeah, but I think that with Cosmi, I think that's very wise to not expect week one. I don't think week one is reasonable at this juncture, but if you can get him back mid-season, that's a heck of a lift. If this team's in the mix with Philly, in the mix for playoff spot, NFC East, whatever it is, that's a heck of a nice lift to get midway through the season, and takes the pressure off of whoever's aching on the offensive line at that point too.
Absolutely. And I think I'm right there with you with Cosmi. Because the one thing I know, like going back to like Junior Gillette with his Achilles injury, if you work too hard at trying to get back, you could possibly blow
Yeah.
the other one. And that's the one thing with Cosmi is I love that he's in there working hard every day. It's just make sure you're doing it in a safe manner, right? Now, my next question for you, what do you think the identity of the offense is? I think this is very crucial and important. As much as everyone likes to talk about the explosion of the running back room, adding somebody that could be like a Riggins type of running back or like B Rob, where you're bringing that tough kind of mindset, that tough offensive identity with the explosion of Jaden Daniels, I think is a very tough offense to kind of go against. So at this point, with adding Debo, adding Laramie, what do you think the identity of the offense is at this point?
Yeah, I think the identity is Jaden Daniels, right? That is the identity of the offense, and it was late in games last year. You just saw it anytime they needed a play. All right, number 5, bail us out. I think it's about how do you keep him from having to make that magic, right? How
Okay.
do when he needs to make the magic, he's going to, and we all love it. And it changes every discussion we have from now until the day he leaves, which is hopefully a long time from now. How do you make it so he has to do that less? How do you make it so that there aren't those 3rd and 12s where he has to scramble? But how do you make it so that they can get him yardage on first down, buy him the opportunity to throw it long, get him the receivers who can buy him a little more time because they're getting respected on the back end. I think probably Cliff Kingsbury is one of the better gets in terms of returning guys this year, right? I
Mhm.
mean, talk to Jalen Hurts about what that's like to have a new offensive coordinator every year,
Yeah.
to be able to have Jane Daniels go into another year with continuity at that offensive coordinator position, I think is only going to help his development.
Absolutely. Next one I have for you. I think that punt returner is not being talked about enough with this football team. OZ obviously leaving, he goes to the Bears, and bless his heart when he does go there. Of course, they're trying to rebuild and everything they do, but also they didn't re-sign Jamison Crowder, if I'm not mistaken. So who do you think could take over the punt return duties, and do you think that's something they could be circling?
Yeah, it's you want to talk about punt return. I want to talk about kicker. I need a kicker. It's I get the Zane Gonzalez back. I want a kicker. I want a real kicker. So everybody's got their special teams wish. Yeah, and that could be coming through the draft. I do think probably kick returner too, even with Austin Eckler coming back, just given how nasty that concussion was for him, his injuries. I don't think you want him back there a lot on special teams. And we'll see what they do if they're moving touchbacks to the 35. You're probably gonna have a lot more returns this year. I just think those are unnecessary hits for him to take probably in the aggregate. Leave him to the run game and the pass game. So yeah, maybe that's a pre-training camp move where you bring in a special teams guy. I am curious how they feel about Luke McCaffrey in some of those roles, if that's maybe an off-season project for him. I'd be curious where they end up at training camp because I agree with you. That's certainly I have a lot of special teams questions on on my card here. So maybe we'll do a whole special teams podcast one of these days.
One of these days. Last question I have for you.
Give the people what they want.
That's what they want, is they want the special teams pod. Hopefully we could be able to book Tress Way for that one, because he would absolutely put it over the top, Michael.
Yes.
But last one I have for you, obviously you got to get back to your Sunday and watch these basketball games. I know everyone's watching them and loving it. But Marshon Lattimore, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that he's not his usual former self. How can he contribute and help this football team?
I think that's such a big question for these guys during training camp. And they can't be afraid to release him if they need to release him. But I think on his end, the question is, can he be a number two or a number three corner? And a lot of times with these guys, the big talkative ego number one guys, they just can't handle being a number two or a number three. It just doesn't go well. What if that's it? What if that's as good as he is? Is that something he's able to do? Is that a role he can slide into? I think that's what you have to figure out during camp. Because if he's still, I'm number one, I'm the guy, and he's doing, you're getting the results you got last year. You're not a number one guy anymore. So I think that's the big question: is can he handle being a number two guy? Can he handle being a number three guy? If he can, there's room for him. Certainly, it's a position of need. It spares you from having to go wild in the draft or make a trade or anything of that nature. But I'll be watching him very closely during training camp. I think we'll get our first indications, right? Of if he's back to his old form, fantastic. He's a number one. Let's go. Another Adam Peters win. If he's got 80%, can he be a number two? Can he be a role player, team player? And three, if it's just not there anymore, it's just not there anymore. It's not a waste of money because you tried. But I think you got to be willing to move on if it's time to move on.
I'm with you, because just like with sales, if you're buying anything like a car, you have to be willing to walk away, right? You don't want to be pigeonholed into
I like
anything.
that.
Michael, before you get out of here, just like to plug your radio show, of course, because I have forgot, even though I've been on AWOD shows so many times, I still forgot. If you could plug that in for me, please.
I'm gonna have you on this year when we get to training camp.
Okay.
So we'll get you on. It'll be fun. We don't have a ton of guests. It's not a guest heavy show, but we'll get you on for sure. 910 The Fan, which is the Fan in Richmond. We're affiliated with 106.7 up in DC. I'm on 10 to noon each day. We make a podcast. It's called MP on the Mic. Out of it, the world needs more podcasts, so I'm here to provide.
Absolutely love it. Michael, go and enjoy this Sunday and this round of basketball, brother.
All right, same to you.
Thanks, Michael. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Michael Phillips, the funny man himself. Always appreciate his time that he's able to come on here. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Obviously, my co-hosts are not here with me, of course. But to wrap up this episode, let's go over some fan questions and some hypotheticals going into this draft. There's a lot of guys. If you haven't already, go and follow the Red Zone in the Lab. Our boy Deuce, who runs that show, he has, I think, shows every single day coming out, but we do a draft show on Sunday evenings where we go over these draft prospects at different positions. Maybe not positions of need for Washington at this moment, but tonight, like, we're going over tight ends. It's not because we're saying tight ends are a need for Washington. These are the guys, but it's much more so just an overview of each position in the draft leading up to the draft. So keep that in mind, and if you can, check mark that and go check it out. It'll be airing tonight at 8 or 8:30, and make sure you're able to hit subscribe on their show as well. But let's answer some fan questions real quick. This one's submitted by the Colonel. How much does the New York Giants acquisition of Jameis Winston concern you? It is a concern because I have a lot of respect for Jameis Winston, not only because he's one of the funniest people, and whenever you put a camera on him, he's going to do so well in that New York media just with all the one-liners that he's going to have at his press conferences, but he's also a guy that feeds the football to his wide receivers, even going back to Tampa Bay and what he was able to do with Mike Evans and company, really just force-feeding those guys. If you're talented, he's going to get the ball to you, and obviously him and Malik Neighbors are going to do wonders together and be able to move the ball downfield, and that is a concern. But honestly, going against the Giants, the one thing you really want to make sure of is that they can't run the football on you and make it easy on Jameis to hit you with that play action, right? And we kind of saw with Jameis this year when he came into the game for Deshaun Watson, just how great of a guy he was in response to being able to lift up Deshaun Watson. But him coming in, he kind of lit a fire under that football team with the Browns. They were actually able to win some football games and do well. And so with Jameis, The one concern is that this is going to be his best year of football. He's going to be able to help them win football games because we know about their defense and what they have. Obviously, last year their guy at the corner didn't have the best year, but the year before he was on fire. But just saying that defense overall is not inherently bad. They got Dexter Lawrence in the middle. They're very structured defensively very well. You're just kind of concerned that they're going to be able to strike fire, right? Just like kind of how Washington, because I know everyone's going to be poo-pooing the Giants, myself included. If you were to ask me if we're really worried about the Giants doing something, I'm going to say no because I love the Commanders and I believe in them and what they're going to be able to do. But honestly, that is something to be concerned about because Jameis does force feed things. And obviously, they re signed Darius Slayton, who we kind of know about already. I know this fan base wanted us to re sign Darius Slayton, but it is kind of crazy, though, that I will put this out that they gave Slayton more money than they offered Saquon Barkley. That's just, it's insane to really think about in retrospect. But look, Jameis, I have a lot of respect for him on and off the field. I think that he's a type of guy that even though your quarterback position might not be the best in the NFL, you could do a lot worse than Jameis Winston, and he's somebody that could be a fresh breath of air for those teammates in the locker room. And so it is a concern, not overly concerned, just because of my confidence in this football team and what we offer. But overall, I think that adding that to the equation, that somebody like it could like Daniel Jones did very well against us when he played us. But Jameis, I think, is somebody that obviously you're going to be able to maybe get some more turnovers and everything like that. But he's obviously going to be able to get the ball out of his hands. And somebody like Malik Neighbors, you have to be concerned about in that regard because that guy is going to eat regardless of where he is. A lot of respect for Malik Neighbors and what he was able to do in New York this year with a carousel of quarterbacks there. The next question from the Colonel. If one of the premier running backs is available at 29, is it more likely that we select a running back or trade back for more picks? So that's the big question because my big thing is it takes two to tango, right? And I think the quarterback position is probably your best asset if there is one floating there. You know, you're talking about Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders. I don't think Shedeur is honestly going to make it to the back end of that first round, but let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that he is. That's the position Washington could be in to be able to say, all right, yeah, let's move back here. So what is more likely? That there's going to be a team willing to jump up to 29 for one of those quarterbacks or maybe an edge rusher, but in the same breath, is Washington truly in a position to not take that edge rusher? Because Dante Fowler having double-digit sacks, 10.5 sacks last year, was a great thing for this football team. And I honestly believe, regardless of who the pick is for edge, if they do go down that route, that what Dan Quinn, what Joe Witt Jr. have preached since they've gotten here is that they're not really concerned about the weaknesses of an edge rusher and everything like that. They're going to put them in a position in their strengths, knowing what they do well, and they're going to maximize their ability to do their strengths. And so regardless of who Washington selects, I think that we're going to be getting a very, very good prospect in what they believe they can do, and they have a firm understanding of how to implement that person to be able to do well. But in speaking of running back, Michael and I didn't really talk about it, but I think that's one of the positions that could be like the Jerzon Newton of last year, where if there is a guy that is that good sitting there, that's somebody you could really feel good about. Maybe they do go down that route. And if they do, bless their heart, then I'll be one of the biggest fans of that guy. But I honestly believe that the depth of the running back room, that's a position that do you really truly need? Like, will you be getting that home run threat in the back end of that first round? If that player is that good, are they really going to be at 29? Honestly, realistically speaking, if that player is that good, they're not going to make it to 29. And if they do make it to 29, that means there's not that many running backs selected in the first round. So I'd be willing to argue that you'd still be able to get really good quality if a running back is there at 29 after that, because not many teams have used that many assets to get one up until 29. Maybe other teams are focusing that second, third, fourth round for that running back room. Maybe that's when they could get sliced up a little bit. So I'll say it's more likely that they trade back out of the first round, try to recoup in those middle rounds. Like I talked to Logan on Wednesday, and he expertly said he thinks the real depth of talent in this draft is really in that third to fourth round range. And I'm right there with him, man. There's a lot of really capable guys that you could bring in and add on to this football team, like Bishal Tootin out of Virginia Tech, home run hitter, somebody that could do really well, or Brashawn Smith from SMU. There's like 30 draftable running backs in this class graded by analysts. And honestly, I believe that this football team is not in a position to use that first rounder on a running back to say this is the difference between us beating Philly. Like us being able to control our destiny in the NFC East and in the NFC. As much as it would help the offense, of course, but if we're being realistic and honest, was the offense the reason for why we lost games last year? Or is it the other side of things, right? And that's where I really want to press the matter of factness of it, right? We're saying, where can Washington get the best production out of the first round? And obviously, you're going to say, well, they could force feed their new running back. Yes, of course. But we also have to take in a matter, can you pass block? That's one thing B-Rob does really well. Austin Eckler stuck his head in the mud, right? Jeremy McNichols, we can all go back to that Cincinnati Bengals game where he stuck it in there, was able to knock that pass block out, so Jaden Daniels was able to get that ball to Terry McLaurin in the end zone. And that's one area that we also have to focus on. As much as we love to talk about pass catchers, the speed, the explosion, can you block? Because being able to keep your quarterback upright could be the difference in winning the football game like we saw in Cincinnati. And so that's something that has to be taken seriously. And that's why I'm really focused on being able to get out of the running back position, of course. And I think that this team will be able to do that. So what will I say is going to be most likely is that Washington is going to be able to trade back. And maybe they won't wait until the end of the draft to be able to do that. What's up, buddy? You want to say hi to everybody?
No.
I'm by myself right now. Do you want to say hi?
I just wanted to open like a garage door.
Oh, you can't reach it? Okay, Key, wait a little bit. Just let me wrap up here. Sorry, everybody. Say, Cash, I just wanted you to say hello to everyone who is listening because they love to hear your voice just like I do. All right, everybody. Now let's get into our next question, which is from Deluxe. His question is, the wide receiver depth is facing a lot of criticism. Brown, Gallup, Osborne have combined for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns over 4 seasons. They will cost a combined $7 million this year. Diami Brown got $10 million this year with 784 yards and 4 touchdowns in the same 4 years. In a booming wide receiver market, isn't that good production for the cost to provide depth to the room? Signed, Confused Commander Fan. Good. Yes, I totally agree with you because for the cost of one in Diami Brown, based on how much he is getting paid by the Jags, that is almost like a tax for a bad team, right? They need more explosion. They're getting that with Diami Brown. Obviously, we can all agree that Michael Gallup being retired for a year, you could sit there and say, look, man, he's probably not the same guy, but he is a wide receiver that you can trust to be in the right position at the right time. KJ Osborne, another one you could say is kind of that longer-armed guy that's going to be able to make a catch when you need him to. We know about what he did for the Vikings, of course. But the blocking on the outside. I was on a space earlier this week in Telly with Glenn. It was Glenn's space. But Telly brought up saying, well, is there a wide receiver in this draft class that will be able to take Noah Brown's job away from him, meaning the X or wide receiver 2, you could say. And my big thing is there a wide receiver that can block better than Noah Brown? If we go back to that Tennessee Titans game with a huge run by Brian Robinson, the one key block on the outside was Noah Brown, being able to hand up that block up his corner and not allow him to be able to get after B-Rob. And so that's the big thing about Noah Brown is he's very sure-handed, right? If you be able to put the ball in the radius, he's going to come down with it. But he's also very strong-handed in his blocking game. And that's something that we all have to take into consideration regarding the wide receiver room. And Diami Brown, when you look back at him, is he really somebody that blocks really well? And I think that's why looking at what they have added with depth, absolutely love it. Obviously, quantity is probably is better in this situation than quality. And I'm not really sure that Diami Brown was worth more than adding these other guys into the room. And we haven't even talked about Jamison Crowder coming back. And that's one thing that we do have to be concerned about because from the punt return standpoint and third downs and in the red zone, Jamison Crowder proved time and time again, especially that Eagles game where they were able to win in the regular season, Jamison Crowder showed you what he does for you and what he adds to the room. And so that's something that I think Washington did a very good job at is adding the length, adding the height, the blocking scheme, of course. I don't know all that much about KJ Osborne's blocking ability, Deluxe, but I'll say, man, I think that they did a very good job at being able to supplement what they've done. Because with Diami last year, they used him a lot as the motion guy to be able to indicate what kind of defense is there. They used him on those end arounds, very hard runner. But one thing you could say about Deebo is that's what Deebo excels at, is being able to run the ball physically, being a hard man to bring down. I know a lot of people have speculated and talked about his weight coming into this offseason, but look, I know he's going to work hard. He told you that himself, and that's what everyone is going to say when they come to a new team. But I honestly believe that Adam Peters is somebody that's able to speak to Deebo to say, I need you to work hard. And obviously, this being a contract year, it's foregone conclusion the guy is not going to be sitting back just counting his money, right? But at the end of the day, I think they did a good job already adding to it, because it's not just KJ Osborne. It's not just adding Noah Brown back. It's not just Michael Gallup. It's also adding Debo Samuel. So you could already say that they have improved the wide receiver room, have already replaced Diami Brown with that Debo Samuel kind of threat. And maybe the deep down the field, is that something that Debo is going to excel at more so than Diami? Because the one thing about Diami, very good deep downfield. And we saw that this year. When you finally have a quarterback for him that can stretch the field, he's going to do something for you. And Debo, I think this is probably the best quarterback that Debo is going to be playing with. Brock Purdy, as much as respect as that guy gets, he's not really known as somebody that stretches the field for you in terms of vertical passing game like Jaden Daniels does. So being able to really turn the heat up on Debo is going to be huge for this offense. And Jaden, obviously adding to that, is going to be another just step up for everybody. So I think that they did a good job of not only, obviously you could put it Debo's contract is saying that they paid more for it, of course, but they, for the bang for the buck, I think you could have done a lot worse than what they've done. And maybe they're not done, because they still have the draft to go down and be able to add some more bodies here if they do feel the need. I think somebody like Jalen Noel from Iowa State is one of those stretching the field type of guys, a former captain of Iowa State who's very good vertically, good route runner, has sure hands, and is a willing blocker. I think he's very good off the line of scrimmage if he is pressed. And that's somebody you could feel comfortable with if you were to be in that second to third round range, if you're able to trade back, to be able to add to this football team, to add just a little bit more explosion to this offense, if that is a concern for Adam Peters and company, because maybe Debo at this point in his career doesn't have that explosion vertically as others, but just adding another threat. And Jalen Noel was lined up in the backfield at Iowa State next to the quarterback at times, but then he was used as that motion guy. So if you're looking for a backup to Debo in that kind of role, Jalen Noel would absolutely fit that bill for you. Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech, talked about him yesterday with my brother. That's another guy you could feel very comfortable with in the later rounds. I think Daquan Thornton from either Texas or Tennessee is another wide receiver that's going to be talked about. But yeah, I think they did a great job of being able to replace Diami Brown with lesser money with three guys, and you know what you're getting, and they're excited to be here. It's not just coming here for a payday, right? They're coming here to be able to extend their career and to finish their, not finish, but be able to put an exclamation point on their career, right? And that's what we learned kind of last year, because Diami got paid, man. And obviously he deserves it. Bless his heart and best of luck to him. Next question from Deluxe. The tight end and running back rooms have returned without changes at this point. I do expect a running back to be added in the draft at some point. The wide receiver room and O-line room got a lot more attention in free agency. Can we draw any information from the changes and lack of changes to the position groups? Absolutely, you can. So if you look at it in totality, like you're looking at what happened against Philly, if you're using that as the blueprint for why they wanted to get better in certain areas this year, obviously Diami had the inopportune fumble, and he didn't get going until the playoffs. And of course, you wanted him to be able to return here, but it was all about money. That being said, they knew they needed to get better up front. We just didn't know where and what avenue. And nobody really knew that Laramie Tunsil was in the cards. Because if you would have told us that trading for a left tackle was going to be the way to go, would have said, absolutely do it. Be able to shore up that left side of Jaden Daniels. So what I think ultimately is what this is telling us with the free agency and the trades at this point is the information that I've said for a while. You want the now on offense, i.e. trading for Debo Samuel, i.e. trading for Laramie Tunsil. You are adding the now for that offense because that was your strength last year. The strength really of this football team was being able to put up points. And adding Laramie Tunsil and others really helps out everyone else. The tight end room, John Bates was crucial to this football team and what he was asked to do. He's one of those unsung heroes, guys that will get down dirty for you, get into the run game, be able to move some guys around, but be able to catch for you at times as well. Obviously, he had a fumble. I think it was the Falcons game that he fumbled in. But it's not like he makes a lot of crazy mistakes all the time, right? But I think it really tells you that they want to keep things the same from a positional group aspect for Jaden Daniels so that there is not a crazy amount of changes. But the changes you are making, like Laramie Tunsil, like Debo, it's almost like a cherry on top of the sundae, so to speak. Whereas you're still recouping the guys that you want, in the John Bates, the Zach Ertz, of course. But where you're adding those players, it's not like you're doing a complete overhaul to the point where Jaden has to redo things, relearn things, or try to get on the same page of in a crazy amount, right? So I think they did a good job of saying, we want to retain the ones that have a very good relationship, that are very important, and that's what they have done. Obviously, Diami, you could make an argument for of being very important, especially in that playoff run. But that being said, the bang for your buck was not really worth it in the sense of they knew that money was going to be diminishing the more guys that they signed, especially on the defensive line and others. But you kind of needed to be able to bring back more bodies because we talked about how many guys they had. I think it was like 28 in total leaving. And so they needed to be able to add more bodies to the equation. So being able to bring down that price range was very, very important. So the indictment for me is that they're saying we want to keep it the same for Jaden, but the areas that we're adding to, we really want to be able to bring, I think Logan said this very well, the scaffold, right? Raising the floor of the offense. And that's exactly what they did by getting Laramie and getting Debo. And so I think that what they're telling us is they're going to look at defense in the draft heavily, and I'm sure that they are doing that, because you want to be able to build that young foundation defensively for the long term. Because what they have added defensively, right? They let John Allen walk. They traded for Marshon Lattimore, who we can all agree is probably not at the beginning of his career, right? More towards the end of it. Adding Mikey Samerstill, absolutely love it. But that safety room, can you honestly say that startable, game-changing guy is in that secondary at this moment besides Mikey? No. And so I think that you're looking at, they're going to create that foundation for the defense. They started that with Newton. They did it well with Mikey, but they still need to add more into that defense to be able to say we're comfortable with the defense and to be able to go forward to say we are in a position where we're going to be able to add anybody anywhere at this point and feel comfortable. Because I don't think they feel that way about the defense right now. They got to get solid. And getting solid on defense, you need that combination of youth and you need that combination of explosiveness defensively. And being able to catch the football, honestly, on defense. Mikey kind of showed that last year, doing that very well. And in times that we truly, truly needed it. And so I will say this. Defense is going to be something that's going to be prioritized and looked after. I said this a while ago, and I know nobody listens to me, and you shouldn't, to be honest. I'm a nobody. But just saying, you want after this draft, I think we're going to be feeling a lot better about the defense. And as much as we want to say, well, a rookie is a rookie, they really like vets. I get it. Last year, they started a lot of vets. They absolutely did. But what did that do for us, right? Defensively. Yes, the defense got better than the year before, but you need to raise that up a little bit more because that was the thorn in the backside in a lot of games, especially going to that Dallas Cowboy game, going against Cooper Rush and company. Like, that was atrocious, and that's something that has to get stopped. And to be able to say, we're feeling very good about where we're at. We have to get better. I said this before. I'm not okay with just getting by, right? I want to build a juggernaut. And I know that's difficult to build a juggernaut based on the salary cap situations that you're going to be in, based on how many draft picks that you have. But they've done a very good job of adding that recipe of building up that floor, adding Debo, adding Laramie, but still having the ability to have your first rounder, to have your second rounder, and the ability to trade back to get more so you can add more starters. And I think that we feel very comfortable, even win that second to third round, to say that we can add somebody in here that could contribute right away. And they proved that with guys like Mikey Samerstill, like Brandon Coleman, who they added, right? So I honestly, with this football team, the way that Adam Peters and company have orchestrated themselves this offseason, you feel very confident about the situation that we're in. And I think they have the right mindset in mind to say, We need a little bit more explosion on defense, and that's what they're going to be looking forward to coming up into this draft and possibly the next wave of free agency. Next question that we have, this is from Tim Towner. Thank you, Tim, in the Discord. With the way the O-line sits now, do you think the plan is to have Wiley move to right guard and Coleman to right tackle, or vice versa, or something else? So this is one of those things, like I know I've talked about safety being that kind of Jerzon Newton of this draft class, and I talked about running back possibly being there. But the one that intrigues me is like the Donovan Smith kind of thing, where the left tackle from Ohio State, like let's just say you're sitting there at 29 and there's nobody willing to come up and trade with you for you to trade back, right? And you kind of have to be there. Would you really be elevating the floor of this offense by adding a Donovan Smith, moving him to right tackle? That way you can have a competition at left guard, because you would feel very confident that left guard spot if you had a competition between like Allegretti or Wiley, right, or Herbig. You would feel really good about your offensive line with Smith starting at right tackle, Coleman at right guard. You would feel great about your offensive line at that point. And that's something that if you're looking to beat Philadelphia, that's what the kind of blueprint you're looking for, to say, we are comfortable at all these positions. We have the swing guys, meaning Wiley, right, Allegretti, or whoever loses out. We could swing them and move them anywhere in case of those emergencies. So right tackle is another one of those positions that might not be out of the cards in the late first or early second if they are willing to trade back. I think that's the best case scenario for this football team. Me personally, I really wanted to say this, so thank you for the question, Tim. I know people talked about Wiley moving to right guard. I respect Wiley a lot and what he's been able to do. It's hard to come to this football team in the time that he did and continue to produce, and also to make a really big impact on the coaching staff on a new year, right? With a new coaching staff, you being an older guy, you know that, like I heard, I think it's Buck Showalter said this back in the day, a guy that's on a losing team and a new guy, a new regime, new organization being kind of flipped over, they want to get rid of the guys from the losing ways, because it's hard to get yourself out of those losing ways and to become a winner. So you kind of have to recycle things. You got to move things out and replace it with winners, right? And I think that Wiley did a very good job making that impact with the offense and the organization to say, look, man, I'll take a pay cut. I'll rework my contract. Just find me some work. And I respect Wiley for that a lot. But it scares the daylights out of me to have him starting at right guard. To think about him having to go up against a Dexter Lawrence, having him going up against a Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis, that scares the daylight out of me. Because with Wiley, yes, maybe he's not probably a top 15 right tackle, and I'm not okay with getting by, of course. But my whole point being is adding Brandon Coleman to be your right guard for Sam Cosmi would really help this offensive line and this football team be able to generate that toughness, that push for the running backs in the interior. As much as edge rusher was a concern, the reason why the Eagles beat the crap out of us and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl was because their D-line, specifically those two interior guys, caused so many issues that their edge rushers were able to get those one-on-ones, right? Well, now that you've traded for Laramie Tunsil, you don't have to worry about having those chips to the left side so much. Now you can honestly focus those chips on the right side. And so you'll be having Wiley start at right tackle if you don't go down the draft that way. But you could use those chips on the right side on those edge rushers for Wiley while feeling very comfortable with your guards having to go up against those defensive tackles. So for me personally, I would love to see Brandon Coleman at guard. And I'm not saying that as an indictment of Brandon Coleman that he can't play tackle. No, it's out of respect for what Brandon Coleman brings and the respect I have for the DTs that are in our division and that are in this league, because they are no joke. That's something you have to game plan for. It's not just something you could throw in there and say, yeah, we'll be all right with guard. Guard's not that important. No, with the DTs that we're facing, it's a very important thing, and that should be the area of more importance, in my opinion. So it's not like I'm saying that Brandon Coleman can't play tackle. He absolutely can, and he proved that time and time again. He has the athleticism, has the size, the arm length. We heard Logan talk about this. But I want that for the interior going against those D tackles, so they don't have the ability to generate those one-on-ones easily with those edge guys to be able to suffocate you to death. I want to force that defense to have to send more bodies to open things up for our quarterback in the offense deep downfield so we can generate and score points and honestly be able to run the football sustainably. As much as we want to give grief to the running backs and what they're kind of not non-usage, not non-productive usage last season, the offensive line wasn't doing them all that great of due diligence in the sense of being able to move guys out of the way to make it easy on them. You look, Brian Robinson, as much as I love Brian Robinson, he does lack in vision at times and the footwork to be able to get out of things and making the right decision. With that Tennessee Titans run, I almost felt like that got to his head to the point where he was trying to bounce things too much because things were bottling up in the middle. He knew what people were saying, and he wanted to make a really good point to say, I can get outside. I do have the explosion to get upfield, but it also was a detriment. And so I want to be able to stabilize that offensive line, have big bodies that are strong, that are fast, can be able to pull outside, but also have the strength to be able to move some really good DTs off the ball so we can run the football sustainably. What the Eagles did defensively against the Chiefs is they rushed they sat all their defense, their DBs back. Okay, well, as an offensive coordinator, the first thing that you're thinking is, if they're going to be in that set, if they're not going to be running extra guys, you have to be able to run the football against that defensive formation. The problem is those two DTs were clogging so much crap up that you couldn't run the ball effectively. That's why I think it's very important to put your best guys in the interior now to be able to move those DTs out of the way so you can run the football at that formation. So you can force them to put more bodies there, hit the play action, and be able to hit Debo over the top, be able to hit Terry downfield on those play action, get them to bite up, because the more they respect your run game, better for you long-term as an offense and for Jaden Daniels and keeping him upright and to be able to score some points in this league. Next question is, this is from Tim Towner. Brandon Coleman will be given a chance to be an offensive tackle for no other reason than he has 34/5/8 inch arms. Yes, and I kind of talked about that already. I absolutely agree with you. He is good enough, very good enough to be confident in playing right tackle. Absolutely agree with you. I do. My only issue is, are we good enough in the interior to be able to be confident in what we have offensive line? And that's where Herbig comes in here. Obviously, he missed all last season with the Steelers with his torn rotator cuff, and it killed me that his interview with the press the other day, nobody was there for him, right? That he only had, I think it was only David Harrison asking him questions. I tweeted at the Commanders, I was like, dude, send me the link for the Zoom. I'll ask him some questions. Would love to be able to get his insight on what he feels that he could play, where on the offensive line he can be at to be able to help this football team. So as much as I feel confident about Herbig and others, with Cosmi being out for, let's just say, the beginning of the season, probably half of the season, you have to be able to generate that offensive line push. And does Herbig really move the needle for you? We'll see that in training camp to see how he responds and comes into this football team. But Allegretti played well last season. And having that competition for the interior would be huge. The question is, you want to be able to have that competition not at two positions on the offensive line, at one. And that's when you're really cooking with gas at that point to say, we're putting our best guys out there, and you're going to have to be able to punch us in the mouth, get us off the ball, and move us out the way. And in my personal opinion, if Wiley is there on the interior, you're much more likely to get punched in the mouth and somebody getting knocked off the ball, in my personal opinion. So it's not out of disrespect for Brandon Coleman whatsoever, in my opinion. Now, I had this question for the guys, and what does Debo do for Jaden Daniels and the offense? And this is one thing that it's funny because as much as Debo is a big name nationally, it's something that everybody loves. It's almost like the Laramie Tunsil trade almost took the limelight away from him, which is just music to my ears in terms of what we do as fans and what we are so excited about. Because it wasn't so long ago that we were preaching, we needed Brandon Ayuk. We needed Brandon Ayuk. Hold time now. That's not what we need right now. What we need is to build and have this thing run through Jaden Daniels, which we have proven. So now we're adding those kind of moving pieces for him. And what Debo does for you is really adding physical nature to this offense. As much as Diami was a great running the football, hard runner at times, you could say, Debo offers another level to it. And I think Michael kind of highlighted this of being able to run out of that running back kind of way. But I know that that's one of the issues that Debo had with Kyle Shanahan, and probably what they talked about in their exit interview, where Debo I'm not speaking for him, but I would imagine he went to they in that exit interview. He's like, look, man, I told you I didn't want to run out of the backfield anymore. I wanted to prolong myself. I want to be able to prove what I can do at the exterior of the offense. And you didn't really give me that ability. So in that case, I want to be willing to walk away. And I can understand where Kyle comes in and says, look, man, I understand you wanted that. And I do. But I needed you. Christian McCaffrey being out for a lot of time, that wasn't something I expected or anybody expected. But I needed that physical running nature for the opposing defense to kind of fear us in the run game, and that's why I needed you there. And I can understand why that was a very good split for both of them, because for Debo, he's going to offer you something where the defense has to keep an eye on him. And not only him, you got Terry McLaurin, of course, but Debo offers you that ability to move that defenders away from that offensive line, to create more space for your offense line to operate, right? Just another eyes to get off of Jaden Daniels, because you got to think about it. You got to worry about Terry going over top on you, and even in the middle of the field as well. But you have to worry about Debo and where he's going, because he could possibly take that ball in an end around like we saw Diami and be able to get upfield and run hard on you on your perimeter defense, on your DBs. But you also have to take into consideration what Jaden did with his legs. And so now it's not just Jaden Daniels' legs that you have to be concerned about. It is, and if you're adding to the offensive line and being able to run the football well, not only do you have to worry about Jaden Daniels' legs, now you have to worry about the running back's legs and what they're able to do based on what the offensive line is able to do for you, moving bodies away. So the way that Debo really, it's multi-layered in the sense, but it's just another set of legs that the defense has to be concerned about on the ground. And as much as I love to be able to see Debo utilized in the passing game and being able to get him on those matchups instead of linebackers, to be able to have him running at DBs more often, that's the best case scenario for everybody involved. And it really takes the top off of this offense to say, now you have to worry about deep threat, you got to worry about the middle of the field, and you have to worry about behind the line of scrimmage. Because this is another playmaker. When you get the ball in his hands, he can run over you. He's going to be laughing as he runs over you and possibly running for more yardage. So you got to be able to dedicate bodies on him. And so you're looking at those kind of corners where, yeah, you have your number one corner on Terry. Well, what are you going to do about Debo? And you can't put a linebacker on Debo. Are you going to have a safety on him? Well, he's going to run through a safety and possibly shake a safety or a linebacker. And so it's just another layer of being able to say we're taking these guys out of the equation, and we could also hit you with Jaden's legs if you're not responding accordingly. I think Debo's run blocking is another avenue that we have to go down and explore and talk about. I think that's a guy that's going to be very physical in that sense. Now, I want to talk about teams that could be willing to trade up to 29. Now, I talked about this with my brother yesterday because we celebrated my nephew's birthday. And I'll tell you this right now. My nephew, Zane, is, if he decides to play football and he wants to pursue a career in football, he's going to have it. He's a big kid, man. Absolutely huge. And I've just said it. He's like a rugby player, the way he looks. And he just looks like he's going to be big. This is a big kid. And I think that he's going to be legit. But what I was saying to my brother is that, like, let's just say the Titans throw a wrinkle into things. And I know everyone's talking about Cam Ward. He most likely will go to the Titans. But let's say they decide to get a little hot and heavy, right? Let's say they do take Travis Hunter, which they all should, adding that playmaker defensively and offense. But let's say Shedeur Sanders is there at 29, and they're the team that's willing to jump up to 29 to reunite Shedeur and Travis Hunter. That's something that could be really appealing to a Titans fan, to not only say that we're adding a playmaking corner, but somebody who can help on offensively, not obviously all the time, but just another playmaker there for Shedeur Sanders, who has a relationship with him, who you kind of have those wide receiver issues at this moment with the Titans. But dude, that's a recipe that I could really see coming into fruition for Washington at 29. And I think it all hangs on what quarterback is available at 29. Jackson Dart, of course, is somebody that's been talked about a lot, and he deserves the credit for that. Lane Kiffin's offenses do really well. They move the ball, man. But the one thing is, everyone and their mother was telling me Matt Corral was going to be a very good quarterback in this football league. And I said at that time, if it's going to be based on running slants all the time, like the Saints do with Michael Thomas, then yeah, that's your guy. That's where Matt Corral is going to be the best pro he can be, is the Saints. Of course, that didn't happen. Bless his heart. I don't mean to speak ill on Matt Corral. I know he was going through some issues, but that's the kind of concern you have about Lane Kiffin's kind of quarterbacks, where they generate a lot of production, but can you guarantee that that will be able to transition to the NFL, where maybe you're not going to be put in the best situation possible offensively, like a Lane Kiffin's offense is going to do for you? And so with Jackson, I think that's somebody where if you're looking at a team like maybe like the New York Giants, who want to add that kind of future, because right now they have Tyrod Taylor and Jameis Winston there, is that really speaking of youth or confidence for long term? No, of course not. But that's another team that you can kind of worry about. The one issue I also have is about trading back is allowing one of those blue chip pieces that could possibly be there at the first round and allowing the Eagles to snag him. And that's the kind of issue that I'm having at the moment of being able to trade back, is saying, if there is a guy worth it there, I'm kind of concerned about trading back and allowing because they lost out on Sweat, right? And obviously they added Azeez Ojulari, who's a very capable pass rusher. But it scares to death me where they're able to add one of these edge rushers there that we could have easily had, used in those kind of speed packages to be able to get after the quarterback, and just being able to replace Sweat with one of those blue chip guys. And that's a concern for me. But I will say, I'll say the Titans, and I think that the Giants are another team to be kind of, we're looking at to say, could they be willing to jump up and be able to get somebody for you? That's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you made it this far, you already know you're a champion. Listen to me talk for the whole hour. But I appreciate you for doing so. The guys are busy today. We're going to talk with them and try to figure out a better day, to be honest, because Sundays is really hard to be able to get some guests on here for us. I know it's a family day and everything like that, but like, we got to figure out a day between us as a podcast, be able to figure out where all three of us can be on at the same time, be able to, for the guys that listen, the fans of this show that just, I know people like Sean and said that, he listens to every show and everything. Like, I really do appreciate people like that, because you got to think about it. It's like, it's not saying anything about us. It's more saying something about you guys and actually enjoying what you're listening to. And so there's a respect factor there for me to be able to give out the best product possible for you guys. And for me, I don't think by doing this alone, I don't think I'm being able to do that for you guys. And I recognize that. And so I'm going to try to work hard to be able to make sure that we can maximize that production for you guys, so you are entertained and you are feeling like after listening to this for an hour or so that it wasn't time wasted, that you're able to learn something and have fun and entertain and be able to chuckle a little bit. Because me personally, the reason why I started this podcast, because I simply love talking about football and all avenues and everything. But I listen to podcasts at work when I'm working, and just they know that providing it for somebody who's at work, maybe not loving what they're doing, right, but still being able to be entertained while they do it, that's music to my ears, and that makes my day whenever I hear about stuff like that. So that's what I want to be able to do for you guys. So I apologize for this whole hour-long solo. But I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys and everything that you've done. I hope you continue to work hard. You loving what you do. And if there's any questions you want us answered, in the meantime, just reach out. Let us know either on Twitter. You can find me at the Burgundy Zone or the Podfather. On Instagram, we're there as well. We have a Discord chat that you can be involved in as well. To be able to add some questions here, I would love to hear from you guys and your input and what you think. And if you ever want to join the show, I'm being frank. Literally just reach out. We love to, I don't care who you are. As much as you think that you might not be able to contribute anything, I know I feel myself in that sort of ways at times. We'd love to hear from you, man, just to be able to talk it up and have fun and talk football. Reach out to us. I'd love to have you on, man. Seriously. So anybody out there, just reach out. We'd love to have you on. All right, everybody. We'll see you again, most likely on Wednesday. I think there's a couple guests I've lined up for Wednesday. When that does come up, I'll have a time for you guys, but keep a lookout on Wednesday and possibly Sunday next week, but I'll talk to the guys to see if that works for them. All right, everybody. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.